Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm John Peters. I'm a therapist who's been in practice for 25 years. And this channel is my opportunity to share with you a wide variety of easy to practice and reliable wellness techniques to lower your stress and improve your mood. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my number one favorite breathing technique that I teach people to lower stress. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about a breathing technique that I often share with people who are feeling acute high levels of anxiety and stress. So if you think about your stress meter as generally having like code green, code yellow, code orange, and code red, this is a breathing technique for people who are regularly finding themselves up at the code orange and code red zone. So that really miserable kind of subjective anxiety that we just don't like how it feels in our body, but it's also the kind of anxiety that's associated with clinical issues like pervasive intrusive thoughts. You can't stop thinking about something. Something's really stressing you out. It's really upsetting you to the level of not only making you miserable, but maybe getting in the way of being able to function, right? So this technique is a really quick and reliable way to reverse that anxiety response so that you come back down into code yellow and hopefully trend toward code green, right? And it's a breathing technique that works because of the effect that it has on your fight or flight response. So we talk about the fight or flight response sometimes as the activation of the autonomic nervous system, which just means we've got this complex system and it is, our body is partially under our control. Like I can take a deep breath or sigh, right? That's a conscious action, but our nervous system has this autonomic function where it's going. There's so many parts of it that are out of our conscious awareness, out of our conscious control, and the fight or flight response is the so-called activation of the sympathetic activation of the autonomic nervous system, right? The sympathetic response, and that is the ramping up of the fight or flight response. But the brain and the nervous system also are able to actively reverse the stress response. And that's called the parasympathetic activation of the autonomic nervous system. You can think it about parachutes come down, right? So sympathetic is activation and going up with the stress response. Parasympathetic is coming back down. And the coming back down is not just a passive thing like an actual parachute, which is it's passively just resting on the air pressure in order to slow the descent of the person who's wearing it. But in our bodies, the parasympathetic action is an active reversal of the sympathetic action. This is why people pee in their pants when they get really stressed out, because when the sympathetic ramps up really aggressively, part of what our body does is it clamps down on all sphincters, including the ones that keep your bladder from emptying. And then a high stress will sometimes cause an overcorrection of too aggressive of a quick reversal. So sometimes we get the sympathetic activation is super high, and then we have the reversal, and the reversal actually loosens sphincters, which is why then someone might pee in their pants, right? So sympathetic activation, parasympathetic coming back down. But here is an interesting feature of the way our bodies and our nervous systems work in terms of breathing and that stress response. Every time we breathe in, we slightly potentiate and activate the stress response. And every time we breathe out, we activate the parasympathetic stress response. And this has nothing to do with the perception of danger or some sort of anxiety trigger. It's just the way our body is wired. Our body is wired that every single breath we take in activates the stress response a little bit, and every single breath we let out activates the parasympathetic stress response, right? The reversal. And you can actually see this. You probably know what a lie detector is, a polygraph machine. So the way a lie detector works is you hook someone up to multiple parameters, and the machine is going to read them in real time and then chart them on a graph. And what it's reading are parameters that give an inference for the person running the test about the stress level of the person who's hooked up to the machine in real time. So like heart rate, galvanic skin response, breathing rate, all that kind of stuff. And so you've got these parameters that are reading out into this machine that's then charting it on the graph. And the reason it works as a lie detector is you ask questions, and then if a person seems super stressed when you ask a particular question, you infer that there's a reason they're stressed, and maybe it's because they're lying, right? So that's how a lie detector works. But interestingly, if you hook somebody up to a lie detector and you don't ask them any questions, you just let them sit there. Every time they breathe in, all of those parameters go up. And every time they breathe out, all the parameters go down. And so that's a way to directly show that the sympathetic activation happens every time we breathe in, and the parasympathetic activation happens every time we breathe out. So here's the hack that you can use to hack all of that to your benefit, right? And it goes like this. You're breathing normally, okay, to start. And then for 3 breaths in a row, you're going to take a slightly shorter in breath, and then you're going to breathe out as long as is comfortable. So it'll look like this. And you do that 3 times. So the in breath is like maybe a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And then out breath is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Doesn't have to be exactly 3 and exactly 10, but relatively quick in breath and then extended slow out breath. You don't want to extend the out breath so long that you feel like you're going to pass out, right? So don't get that aggressive with the practice, but just breathe out, 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 slowly out, fully, just keep breathing out. And you do 3 of those breath cycles. So in, slow out, in, slow out, in, slow out. And then you let go of the practice. And you let go and go back to breathing normally. Just breathe normally for just 2, 3, 4, 5 breaths. And once your breath is somewhat normal, now I realize you may be doing this when you're anxious, so you may say, John, my breath isn't normal because I'm anxious and I'm breathing, whatever. You just let go of the practice, right? That's the point. And after you breathe normally for 30 seconds or so, or a minute, it doesn't really matter how long you take, but you can breathe normally for a short bit, and then you're going to do 3 more of those breaths. And the reason you do sets of 3 and you don't just keep doing that over and over and over and over is that if you do that nonstop, those super long out breaths might cause you to start feeling weird, like you're hyperventilating or asphyxiating. So we don't really want to too aggressively change the internal oxygen CO2 ratio, because that itself can be a stress trigger. That's why holding your breath is a stress trigger. If I hold my breath just a few seconds into holding my breath, my brain is starting to notice my CO2 oxygen level changing in terms of the normal ratio. And even though that's not something we're really conscious of, we can notice when it changes too much, too quickly. And that will become a stress trigger. And that's why you'll start breathing when you hold your breath. And you won't just keep holding your breath until you pass out. So we don't want to do the technique that I'm teaching you too aggressively, meaning just over and over nonstop. Because what will happen is eventually you'll start to change your CO2 oxygen ratio enough that your brain will notice it, and that will actually add to your stress. So that's the rationale for why you do 3 cycles, then breathe normally for a little bit, then do 3 cycles again. And you can keep doing 3 cycles with a pause in between like that over and over. And it's a very, very effective way to lower your stress response when you're up at your code orange and code red level in order to get back down to code yellow and hopefully trend toward code green, right? So if you're feeling a lot of subjective anxiety and stress these days, try that out. You're likely to find that it is calming. and a good component for your overall wellness plan. And if you experiment with that, I'd be interested in what feedback you offer in terms of your results. I predict that it'll work for you, but everybody's an individual. So if you experiment with it, feel free to report back and leave a comment below and let me know how that worked for you. If you like this kind of content, feel very free to hit the like button and feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'm happy to have you here, and if you subscribe, you'll be apprised of upcoming videos. All right, see you soon.